Okay, you're now live.
Good evening. I'm Councillor Lynn Doherty, the leader of West Berkshire Council, and I'd like to welcome you all to this evening's meeting of the Executive. This meeting is to be held in the Council chamber and over Zoom. Joining me in person are members of the Executive, including Councillors Steve Ardwater, Dominic Bowick, Graham Bridgman, Tom Marino, Richard Sumner and Howard Wollaston. Members of the Shadow Executive attending in person are Councillors Lee Dillon, Adrian Abbs, Alan Macrow, Eric Pattenden and Tony Dickers. Other members of the Council who are also in attendance remotely can ask questions on any items included on this evening's agenda. Members who are not on the Executive are not able to vote on any of the agenda items. Please note, the voting to take place at this meeting will be run via show of hands. The officers in attendance include our Chief Executive, Nigel Lynn, and Executive Directors, Paul Coe, and welcoming Claire Lawrence for the very first time. Welcome, Claire. And standing in for Joseph Holmes, who's joining us online, is Melanie Ellis. Nicola Thomas will be the legal advisor to the meeting, and I'm assisted by Sadie Owen, the clerk to the meeting, and Lizzie Reeves, who is acting as our Zoom host. Members, before we start the business of this evening's agenda, I've invited Councillor Richard Sumner to make a statement which I believe to be in the public interest of all of those residents of West Berkshire. So if I may hand over to you, Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Lena. And thank you, members, for your indulgence in this one. I just want to make a statement for everybody with regards to the planning service. So some of you can relax a little bit now. You're looking a little bit worried over this, some of you. It's not that bad. During my term in office as planning portfolio holder since May 2021, I've listened to what's been said and taken action where needed to on a number of points, picking up important issues across the planning service. And one thing that I've clearly noted is the level of frustration that has been, I think it's fair to say, aimed at the service and sometimes directly at officers. So I want to take this opportunity to reassure members and members of the public and say a few words about what's been achieved, what's planned to be achieved over the next few months, and what the direction of travel is for the planning service in the future. The objectives that we've established through listening to colleagues, stakeholders, investors and the public, I've been keen as portfolio holder to work with officers to take forward a number of the objectives across the service. These include recognising and sharing our successes, improving culture of the service, improving our communications, both internal and external, improving, importantly, the performance, the speed and efficiency of processing planning applications, and the efficiency and effectiveness of the enforcement process, and the efficiency and transparency of the SIL process. I'm pleased to say that progress has been made across all of these objectives. Indeed, a number have been completed. Recently, these include publishing our planning enforcement plan, and this was supplemented with training for both members of this council and also to town and parish councils. Our negotiation strategy, looking at planning performance relating to the development management applications, has been published on our website. Establishing customer expectations whilst providing clarity to our users how the planning service will effectively engage. We continue to remain one of the better performing planning authorities in Berkshire. Introduction of Consultee Access and Consultee Cloud with an approximate 75% take-up so far from town and parish councils. This provides greater transparency and efficiency to our town and parish councils in monitoring and responding to planning applications. And I'm sure everyone will have seen £353,000 secured from the Department of Levelling Up, Housing and Communities to help in the digital journey needed to improve further that speed, efficiency, effectiveness and transparency for customers submitting and engaging with our planning applications. I'm proud to announce that our local plan is now close to being submitted in accordance with the local development scheme. And since consultation closed in early March, officers have been reviewing, categorising and summarising nearly 700 representations containing approximately 1,700 individual comments on policies. All representations have today been published online, and a final review of the representations and the collation of the submission documents to the Planning Inspectorate is now well underway. These achievements have been secured against the backdrop of ever-changing national planning policy and the imposition of mandates from government departments such as nutrient neutrality. These have required both well-considered and carefully crafted responses, but also a high level of dedication from officers to carry forward and deliver with our council ambitions. There's still a lot to do. Pleased to say that the progress to enhance the planning service will continue over the next few months, and further enhancements are planned. And these will include things like a customer charter dedicated to the planning service. This will support and supplement our council charter, setting clear expectations of the service to be offered to residents, employers, landowners, and yes, developers. Importantly, we'll also be clear on the ask from them engaging with our highly competent and prized yet finite planning resources. A revised validation list, which is critical to ensure customers submitting an engagement in the planning application process are clear from the outset what information is required to assess and determine their planning applications. Officers will take a deep dive into the enforcement service, building on the excellent work done through the enforcement plan, and this will take a detailed look at the experience of customers that are using the service. Officers will also undertake a further review of the community infrastructure levy, and that's from a customer perspective. This is timely with the recent interest across the service area. Importantly, it will inform PAG's consideration of the issue when it comes to it through their agenda. It's worth noting that the council collected £6.2 million in SIL monies between April 21 and March 22. Between April and September of last year, £2 million was in relief was granted alone. In recognising the complicated nature of the planning system, a comprehensive training programme is also being delivered, and this will support members' understanding of development management, planning policy, planning enforcement and SIL. And I'm pleased to announce that this will be offered not only to members of this authority, but also to town and parish councils to ensure we have opportunity to develop a common understanding across these complex areas. Our planning committees are moving to a monthly basis, and this will provide greater certainty to customers as to when they will be considered at committee, whilst also helping me and my fellow members make best use of our available time to serve our residents. Looking further ahead, we'll see a restatement of the support and commitment the planning service will provide to local communities who have the appetite and ambition to take ownership of their future and the areas through such mechanism and their areas such as mechanisms such as conservation area appraisals and neighbourhood plans. A drive to recruit and retrain permanent staff and not consultants. I know that's an issue which is brought up quite regularly. A range of further digital initiatives to enhance customers' experience of the planning service, and officers responding proactively to the next chapter of changes to planning. And lastly, lest we forget, officers will be preparing for and engaging with the Planning Inspectorate in readiness for the local plan examination later this year. The administration of West Berkshire had a clear objective to deliver a new local plan for the district. This is a local plan that takes difficult decisions, but balances these with the hopes and ambitions of our communities. In an ever-changing policy environment, we have a local plan that is robust, ambitious, and provides reassurance for our residents and businesses about what West Berkshire stands for. I'd like to express my gratitude to the communities and stakeholders who contributed to that process, and also to the tireless dedication and work of officers and my fellow councillors in producing the council's next local plan. This is an important moment for all of us. I thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner, and thank you for that update on the local plan review. Can I therefore move on to item 1 on this evening's agenda, which is, have we got any apologies for this meeting, Sadie?
Yes, we have apologies from councillors Ross McKinnon and Joe Stewart.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, thank you. Apologies from Councillor Brooks.
Thank you all. Can we therefore move on to item 2, which is the minutes? The members are asked to look to see if they will accept the previous minutes of our last meeting on the 9th of February as a true and accurate record. I'm quite happy to propose those minutes. Does that find a seconder?
Does indeed, Leader. Thank you.
Any members, any issues or concerns with those particular minutes? No, in which case, can I ask executive members to vote by raising their hand if they agree these can be signed as a true and accurate record?
I can confirm that's carried.
Thank you. Thank you. I will just sign these. Thank you, Councillor Wollaston. That's duly noted. Members, can we move forward then to item 3? Item 3 is our declarations of interest. Do we have, we've had quite a few hands go up there. So I was going to say, do we have any declarations of interest? I'll start with Councillor Wollaston.
I'm a member of BBOUT.
Thank you, Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, noting the item later on the agenda, which is my paper, I was also given a gift at Christmas of BBOUT membership.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner. I suspect Councillor Vickers is about to say the same.
Well, it's similar, yes. My wife is a member of BBOUT, and through her I enjoy membership. I don't think I've been given any gifts, but I'm also a member of the Local Access Forum, which is an independent statutory body that advises the council and is referred to in both item 8 and in my motion, the response to my motion in item 9.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers and Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thank you. Just to note, most of you know I'm a Greenham Parish Councillor and BBOUT manages Greenham Common, and there has been much discussion that I'll probably comment on later. So I'll make you aware that I'm a Greenham Parish Councillor and I'll be commenting kind of in association with that.
Okay, thank you, members. Thank you for those declarations. I don't see any others going up, so I will take that as all of them. Can I therefore move forward to item 4 on our agenda this evening? Item 4, sorry, Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I noticed that there's a large number of public questions, but this is the last public meeting before the election. And just wondering your view on the time limit for those questions, okay, and whether some of the members' question time, given that there's only 4 of those, could be given to the public section to get through those questions. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Dillon, I think it's in accordance with 5.12.9 of the Constitution, the time allowed for members' questions. We have a very busy agenda this evening. We have a lot of business, so there will be 30 minutes allowed for members' questions in accordance with our Constitution. So first of all, I would like to thank all the members of the public who have submitted questions for this evening's executive meeting, and welcome those of you both in attendance and here in the chamber. You will have the opportunity to hear the answer to your question and then ask a supplementary if you have one. For those public questioners unable to join this meeting, I can confirm that you will receive a written response to your questions within 5 clear working days of the meeting. Your question will appear on the screen and will be answered by the relevant portfolio holder. You will then be given the opportunity to ask a supplementary question, but please remember that this must be to clarify the response provided and not introduce any new business. In accordance with paragraph 5.12.9 of the Constitution, where questioners have more than one question only, their first question will be answered. If after all other first questions have been asked and answered there is sufficient time, we will answer subsequent questions. In the absence of the portfolio holder for finance and economic development and adult social care, written responses will be provided to public questions F, I, J, K, O, P. Again, this will be within 5 working days. Please note that the time limit for public questions is restricted to 30 minutes, and if your questions have not been answered in that time, you will receive a written response within 5 clear working days. The response given either verbally at the meeting or in writing will be published on the Council's website. Can I therefore invite Councillor Tom Marino to answer Mr. Ian Hall's question A on this evening's agenda? Now, I'm not sure if Mr. Hall is on Zoom now, Lizzie. Okay, in which case, as Mr. Hall is not here, we will go to question B, which is Mr. John Goatley to Councillor Tom Marino.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Goatley. Councillors, once elected, will only be removed from office as a member of a local authority in limited circumstances. They're not employees and cannot therefore be sacked. West Berkshire Council has, however, in accordance with the provisions of the Localism Act 2011, adopted a code of conduct for its councillors and also a process by which complaints about councillors can be considered. If you have concerns about a member's conduct, I would invite you to engage that process, details of which are available on the council's website. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please. Thank you for your answer, by the way. I think you'll agree that Clay Hill has been let down by one of its councillors. One was very good. One has let us down, doesn't answer emails or anything like that. So that's all gone. Now, I noticed the two new candidates, one of those is on your WhatsApp group that has been engaging in quite disgusting behaviour. Does that mean standards are slipping, or is it just Clay Hill that you don't like?
Councillor Marino, I would suggest that that does not correspond with the initial question.
I was going to say the same.
It's about standards.
Can we therefore move on to question C on this evening's agenda, which is Mr. Richard Armand. And Mr. Armand, welcome. Lovely to see you. I had that question submitted to myself. I can confirm that since the fund was launched in October 2021, the council has successfully enabled 1.9 million to be provided to support the most vulnerable in our community. In this, there have been over 4,200 applications approved. Those individual claims have been used to fund utility costs, clothing, household appliances, among other items. The fund has also been used to deliver over 23,000 free school meals during the holiday periods. The council has also made direct payments to charitable organisations such as Greenham Trust, Age Concern and Age UK in order to increase delivery to the elderly population. The funding awarded for 2023-24 will continue the delivery, which has proved so successful, including the commitment to continue free school meal vouchers during school holidays. Do you have a supplementary, Mr. Armand?
Yes, is there any indication as to what further may be expected? And if any more does come, will it be got out as promptly as possible to those in the most acute need?
Thank you, Mr. Armand, for that supplementary. I'm very pleased to say that West Berkshire Council acted very swiftly throughout this process, and I'm sure you will have seen the cost of living support hub that was put into place last September, I believe, to help with some of this funding to go out. I've already alluded to a commitment to continue with the free school meals vouchers. In fact, I've seen recent announcements around continuing the HAF, which is the holiday activities and food programmes for these coming holidays. We're also looking at how we help the elderly, particularly because we know that they're some of our most vulnerable in our communities. And myself and Councillor Wollaston have been having conversations with our housing teams to look at how we can make sure that we're getting to those most vulnerable in difficulty with housing as well. So we're currently working on our plan. There's lots of things in process, and I can assure you that we will be acting to act as swiftly as we possibly can to ensure that our most vulnerable get the support. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Can I therefore move on to question D on this evening's agenda, which is Mr. Morgan to Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Morgan. To date, funding has been used to support the delivery of the playing pitch strategy projects, which are 126,000 for the Newbury Sports Hub, £12,600 for the feasibility study at Manor Park and Hollybrook Linear Park, £150,000 towards a 3G pitch at Deanfield School, £75,000 allocated for a 3G pitch at John O'Gaunt School in Hungerford, and finally £230,000 for new grass pitches at Goosecroft Recreation Ground, Purley-on-Thames. Funding has also been allocated for this from the UK Prosperity Fund. All are capital allocations except the feasibility studies. West Berkshire Council has completed a stage year review of the PPS in partnership with Sport England and the 4 national governing bodies of sport, which has encompassed updating the demand and supply data for sports pitches. This will inform future priorities and expenditure of the PPS. I'm sorry, but asking for figures for the next 10 years is just not feasible. The Council operates a 4-year medium-term financial strategy, which has approximately £4 million allocated to the playing pitch strategy over the next 2 years to be reviewed thereafter. In terms of revenue costs, I explained at full council last week that until the new leisure management contractor is appointed, which I hope will be approved at this meeting, I'm not in a position to provide detailed figures, but rest assured that they will be published by June when the contract is scheduled to commence. What I can confirm is that the proposed leisure management contractor, if appointed, will take full financial responsibility for the previously anticipated subsidy on the sports hub. Do you have a supplementary, Mr. Morgan?
Yes, I do. I'm spot for choice, really, on which one to pick. You mentioned thank you, by the way, for all the information about money spent so far, and that's much appreciated. Thank you for that. I'm concerned about the lack of budget moving forward. We were here at the last executive meeting where you said on there allocated £4.026 million in the medium-term financial strategy, which is in your budgets. Are you aware then that the Monksland Sports Hub takes up 100% of that budget, Councillor Wollaston? I'm sure you are. But my supplementary question is this. You mentioned the Schedule B of the playing pitch strategy. I've requested a freedom of information. Why is that information not available when it's been presented to the corporate board last September? Why is that information not available to the public? That's my question.
That report is going to the operations board in May and will be released after that.
But it went in last September. I've seen the minutes for it, Councillor Wollaston.
As you are aware, because I think you were at council last week, that was delayed because of the judicial review on the. There's nothing to do with the judicial review. It's a public document. I'm afraid, Mr. Morgan, it is.
Well, I think you're wrong. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you, Councillor Wollaston. Can we move on to question E, which is Mrs. Paula Saunderson. Is Mrs. Saunderson online? Yeah, I can see nods. So, Councillor Sumner, can I ask you to respond for Mrs. Sanderson?
Thank you, Leader. And again, thank you for your question, Mr. Saunderson. Yes, the council is investigating the opportunity for local land to be used for nutrient neutrality mitigation, new habitat creation for off-site biodiversity net gain. The details of any scheme will be published in due course and will be presented to executive or council for approval. There is a need to avoid inflating agricultural land values to ensure that these mitigation schemes are financially viable. Do you have a supplementary?
I didn't actually hear all the questions, the answer, because I was being promoted to a panellist.
Would you like that repeated, Mrs. Saunderson?
Would you mind? I'm awfully sorry.
Okay, that's not a problem. Councillor Sumner, do you mind repeating that for Ms. Saunderson?
Always a pleasure to speak to Mrs. Saunderson, Leader. Thank you.
And me to you.
Thanks again for your question. I'll repeat, yes, the council is investigating the opportunity for local land to be used for nutrient neutrality mitigation and new habitat creation for off-site biodiversity net gain. Details of any scheme will be published in due course and will be presented to the executive or council for full approval. There is a need to avoid inflating agricultural land values to ensure that these mitigation schemes are financially viable. Do you have a supplementary?
No, that's excellent. Thank you very much for your response. And I'd just like to say thank you to everybody who's answered all my horrible questions over the past period. So thank you to you all.
Thank you, Miss Saunderson. It's been an absolute pleasure. Can we move therefore to item G on this evening's attendance register, which is Mr. Pike. Is Mr. Pike available? Yes. Right, so that's question G, which is to you, Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Mr. Pike, for your question. The answer is that the cost of providing temporary accommodation for residents who have been displaced is £3,500 per month. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you. My question was that I was expecting the total cost to the council of of the provision. So that would be the total number, that number you quoted times the total number of months times the number of houses needed. So if you can't provide that, I'd be grateful for that in writing. Thank you.
I will do, sir.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary? Well, that was okay. Can we therefore move forward to item H on this evening's agenda, which is Mr. McDougall to Councillor Howard Wollaston?
Thank you for your question, Mr. McDougall. Newbury Town FC were allocated a pitch at Henwick Worthy for the season 2019 to 20, which allowed them to be promoted to a Step 7 club. The charges for that season only were covered by West Berkshire Council. There are no future plans to subsidise or contribute, but in the future, but we will take matters on a case by case. Do you have a supplementary?
I do, yeah, thank you. I mean, given the level of subsidy that you're going to do to rugby teams with the Monks Lane development, why won't you do anything substantial to that for football teams in the area?
I think we're proposing to provide you with a brand new sports hub, sir.
Yeah, but you're not subsidising the rental of the pitch, which you are for rugby.
Thank you, Councillor Wollaston. Thank you, Mr. McDougall. Can we therefore move forward? Mr. Hall's still not with us? In which case we can move forward to question N on our agenda this evening, which is Mr. Paul Morgan to Councillor Howard Wollaston.
Thank you again, Mr. Morgan. All the elements listed above in your question are contained within the new contract, except for building insurance and the sinking fund for the pitch replacement every 10 years, which remains within the council. Equipment is being supplied within the capital cost budget allocated from the council. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes. Yes, I do. So just to be clear, so all of the costs identified, such as personnel costs, utility costs, management costs, profit, the subsidy of revenue support from the council, was that all included in the maintenance contract?
Yes, Mr. Morgan.
Can we have visibility of that, please?
Thank you. I think we had the supplementary there.
No, I haven't.
Oh, haven't you? No, sorry, apologies. Over to you.
Okay. Can we have visibility of the ongoing costs, please?
You will be able to, but not until the contract's awarded.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, in which case can we move to question Q, which is Mr. Simon Pike to Councillor Sumner.
Sorry, can I ask what's happened to question O?
I think that was a portfolio holder who's not in the room, and therefore you will receive a written response. So
it's listed to the same person that you said. P or Q, O and Q are listed to the same to the portfolio holder for housing, leisure and culture, the same. So it looks like the sequence has changed since the agenda that I printed out. So
I've got question O, are you saying? Because that was originally to the portfolio for finance and economic development.
Well, obviously there are multiple versions of the agenda in circulation.
Yeah. Well, I can only apologise for that. The next on my list, because we have two portfolio holders missing, is Q. So I'm going to ask Councillor Wollaston to answer Q. In the interim, I will go back and see if there's any questions that are missed that should have been for Councillor Wollaston and not for Councillor McKinnon. So I'll just ask the clerk to check that while Councillor Wollaston takes Q.
I think, Leader, Q is not me, it's transport and countryside.
Apologies, Councillor Sumner.
Anybody think you didn't have enough questions, Councillor Wollaston? Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Mr. Pike, for your question. I mean, I've given the answer earlier. This is actually the same question that came in last week. Approximately 700 representations have been received. This figure is approximate because some respondents have requested that their names are withheld, but anonymous comments cannot be accepted. So the relevant people have been contacted again to explain the situation and have been asked if they wish to withdraw their comments or add their information. Do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, thank you. That number is almost the same as were the number of representations that were received at Regulation 18. So how come the time taken to process them is so substantially different?
I'm not sure it is the same. I thought regulation 18 response was higher than that, in all honesty.
It was 700. It was 700 respondents and about 2,500 total responses.
Okay, so what we've done is, and this sort of bridges onto your next question, really. We've managed to allocate resources from across the Police Directorate to deal with that.
Thank you.
Point of order, Leader, if I may.
Of course, Councillor Vickers.
There's confusion over who's supposed to answer the question.
And I have checked that confusion, and there's no confusion. The lists were published. O is a question to Councillor McKinnon, and Councillor McKinnon is not here. And those were published lists. So unfortunately, I don't know where the confusion is, but it's not on our side because Councillor McKinnon, unfortunately, had to call suddenly. So
the point is that on the agendas which I'm looking at as a member, which I received from officers, it's completely different in some cases, okay. And it seems quite easy for the executive, the administration, to decide which member answers. And yet, when a member conveniently isn't available to answer, you aren't able to divert that question to another executive. The whole point of public questions is that they are answered in public, live, and not in writing.
And Councillor Vickers, I can tell you we've been answering these questions live in public for the last 4 years. If, unfortunately, a portfolio holder has a last-minute issue, then I'm afraid then they get a written response, because the best person to give a proper supplementary is that portfolio holder who has the pure insight into that portfolio. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on to question R on this evening's agenda, which is Mr McDougall to Councillor Howard Wollaston.
Thank you again, Mr McDougall. Decisions on cancellations of football matches at West Berkshire football facilities are made on the day by site staff and occasionally with the referee in attendance. It is not practice to cancel matches on one day in order to support football matches or on another day, regardless of the age groups involved. Very occasionally, staff will prioritise cup games. These have to be played on a specific day over league games, which can be more easily reprogrammed. The issue is where grass pitches are at risk of falling into an unplayable condition. The artificial pitch at the Sports Hub will, of course, go some way to overcome this problem. Do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, I do. I mean, just to point out, that does happen, so you may not be aware of it, but girls' football matches were cancelled and then men's games were played the same day. So my question is, given there's now a big backlog of girls' football games, could they not use Faraday Road to catch up on the backlog? Since that's a football pitch ready to use?
Can I ask if that can be replied to by an officer?
I think that's a separate question, actually, to the original, because I don't actually see any specific reference to girls' football.
Okay, there's a backlog of children's football matches. Could they be played at Faraday Road where there's an existing football pitch?
I'll need to give you a written response, and I'm afraid I don't know the answer.
Okay, thank you both. Can we move forward then to question S on our agenda, which is Mr Miller to Councillor Wollaston.
Mr Miller is just joining now. I'll let you know when he's in. Okay, he's joined the Zoom.
Can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you, Mr Miller. Councillor Wollaston's about to answer your question for you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Miller. Any delay risks incurring further increased capital cost. A further factor is that the site will need to be ready by March 2024 to enable local football teams to register the Newbury Sports Hub as their home and to play home matches there in the 2024-25 season. This administration fully expects to remain in control of this council, as the electorate will see through the lack of policies and the promises being made by the parties opposite, which are clearly not affordable. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, thank you. Yes. It would seem to me that you're risking further unnecessary spend of taxpayers' money, and by doing so, you are recklessly and in a fiscally irresponsible way acting. Your administration has lost its sense of public service. It would just, it's a few weeks to pause it. Yes, if you win, go ahead. If you don't win, then you're not risking further loss of taxpayers' money because we will be cancelling it.
You're entitled to your opinion, obviously. The key point, though, is the March 24 date, which we need to hit in order able to allow local football teams to register. And if we don't get on with it now, I'm afraid we won't be able to achieve that.
Well, previously you said you complete.
Can we therefore go to item T on our agenda, which is Mr. Morgan to Councillor Wollaston?
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. I'm informed by the finance team that for most capital projects, including this one, the council can recover all of the VAT it incurs as it is exempt. Do you have a supplementary?
No, thank you. That's very clear. Thank you for that.
Thank you both. Can we therefore go to item U on this evening's agenda, which is Mr. Pearce to Mr. Wollaston?
So I wish you go on to your brief. Thank you for your question, Mr. Pearce. The statement is not misleading. The delay caused by the judicial review has resulted in substantial inflationary costs attached to the construction of the artificial grass pitch, pavilion and car park, and increased energy costs. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Things do seem to be misleading on this Monks Lane Sports Hub on the finances. Is it not time that some consultation with the public was done with regard to moving Faraday Road to Monks Lane?
We've already completed an extensive consultation with the public about the proposals for. I'm sure we have.
Point of order. I believe this is public questions, not Councillor Dillon questions.
At the moment, the application planning consent is for a pitch. No mention of Faraday Road.
Thank you both.
Can I just say,
can we move on then to item V on our agenda? I'm sorry, Mr. Pearce, we have a busy agenda. I'm trying to get through everyone's questions. You've had your question, you've had your supplementary. We have tried to explain to you before, this is not a statement, it's not your political positioning, it's nothing else, it's public questions. Now, I've given you the opportunity to ask your question, and I've given you the opportunity to have your supplementary. We don't need to hear your statement this evening, thank you. Can we therefore move on to question V on our agenda, which is Mr. Simon Pike to Councillor Howard Wollaston.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Pike. As part of the project to refurbish the Four Houses Corner site, due regard has been given to how decisions and activities might affect people with protected characteristics. Overall, it has been assessed that the refurbishment of the site will deliver improvements and have a positive impact on the lives of people with protected characteristics. The Council has put in place support for those with protected characteristics, and it will continue to have due regard to its duties under the Equality Act 2010. Do you have a supplementary, sir?
Well, thank you. Well, my question was the impact of the delay, not the overall impact. So I'd be grateful if you could clarify that. I guess that would have to be in writing, because there was the planning inquiry for Gypsy and Traveller site at Lawrence's Lane. A witness there said that the delay was causing serious distress to travellers who are used to living on a site rather than in housing. Thank you.
Are you happy, Councillor Wollaston, to take that as a...
I do have an answer if you...
No, well, you have the right to answer.
There have been delays to the project. However, the Council is committed to completing redevelopment of the site and to ensuring an ongoing engagement with residents in the wider community. As part of the project to refurbish the Four Houses Corner site, an equalities impact assessment will be undertaken in order to ensure the requirements of the residents are acknowledged. There have been delays, as I mentioned, to the project. However, the Council is totally committed, and we hope to be submitting a planning application in the near future.
Thank you both. Can we therefore move forward to question W on our agenda, which is Lee McDougall to Councillor Howard Wollaston.
Thank you again, Mr. McDougall. We acknowledge that the planning application 20/01966 was approved by West Berkshire Council with the potential for the Faraday Stadium site to achieve the Step 4 ground grading. However, as you are well aware, the Council's landowner has exciting alternative plans for the development of the Faraday Road site and provide a significant boost to the local economy. As such, the site cannot be said to have been identified as a Step 4 football ground other than by third parties. Do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I mean, it's really misleading, do you not think? Surely you should say a site has been identified, but the landlord, the council, will not release it. This is very deceptive to the public to say there's no other site been identified. I think it's deliberately misleading, and quite frankly, you should be ashamed of yourselves.
You're entitled to your view, sir. I disagree.
Thank you both. Can we therefore move on to item X on our agenda, which is Mr. Pike to Councillor Howard Wollaston.
X is to Mr. Councillor Sumner.
I think your list has slipped, Leader. It's down to me.
Apologies, my list does say Councillor Wollaston. Apologies, Councillor Sumner.
Quite all right. Thank you for your question, Mr. Pike. And as I touched on earlier, I think this goes into some of the detail that you were asking as your supplementary. The appropriate number of councillor officers has been assigned to the processing of the Regulation 19 consultation. Up to 24 officers have been reviewing the representations, including officers from the wider planning and regulation team who have been supporting the planning policy team. The review of representations has been completed and all eligible submissions published on the local plan review consultation software objective. Do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, thank you. So that is not the end of the review, because my understanding is that an officer, the director of place, still needs to decide whether the plan is ready for submission. And I noted that your statement at the beginning of the meeting prejudged that by making it as a fact that it would proceed to examination. So could you say when the director of place is expected to complete that review before the possible submission of the plan? Thank you.
Thank you. Final reviews, yes, absolutely, are ongoing. The submission is imminent. I have a draft of that proposed submission in front of me at the moment, and it will be, I would expect, within the next week, possibly 10 days.
Thank you.
Thank you both. And we move to this evening's final question, which is why, which is Councillor Pike to Councillor Howard Wollaston.
Thank you, Councillor Pike. After lifting of lockdown, the project was reviewed to ensure affordability and proposals were reasonably aligned. Due to the general increase in development costs post-COVID, a revised options appraisal was required to be undertaken to review the costs and design implications for the project going forward. That process has now been completed and the budgets have been approved for delivery in 2023-24. Do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, thank you. So if the delay was in the starting of the work prior to planning application, why were the residents moved off site before any work was started? Thank you.
The answer is because there's significant remediation of the site required.
Thank you both. Thank you for your questions this evening. That concludes them, and therefore we can move forward.
Leader,
with
before you do, point of order, just to respond to Councillor Vickers' point of order. Well, I just want to, I think for public, maybe a matter of explanation for the public. The agenda as published went to question O. We've just reached question Y. That is because further questions were submitted after the agenda had been published, as is quite proper, because members of the public and members of council can ask questions on the agenda items. That's what happened. Then there was an adjustment to the order of the questions. So certain letters changed, but the questions have been, I've checked across, and the questions that were on the agenda as published were on the revised agenda and have been answered where the portfolio has been available to answer them. I hope that explains the position.
Thank you.
Leader, that wasn't actually the point I was making that he's answering. The point I was making is that you change the portfolio holder who will answer at your will.
We don't actually, we base it on the question and the relevance of the question, but I'm not going to continue this debate because we've got a long agenda to get through this evening.
That's fine. We'll change things when we take over.
So item 5 of the petition. Do we have any petitions for this evening's executive? I haven't been made aware of any, and therefore, look at Sadie, no. Therefore, can we move forward to item 6 on this evening's agenda, which is the local transport consultation. Councillor Sumner, I believe you're going to introduce this report.
I am, Leader, thank you.
And does that find a seconder?
No, the report is to no, Leader.
Oh, doesn't need a seconder then. Over to you, Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Leader. Members, this paper is a brief summary of the local transport plan consultation and its progress to date. The report, as I said, is to note. Just for clarity, I requested this report as an update to members on the achieved work to date and the ongoing work in development. In line with the local plan period, this plan runs from 2024 to 2039, the current plan ending in 2026. Priorities for focus are creating places for people, providing sustainable access for all, decarbonising transport and supporting sustainable growth. At this stage, with the consultation having closed yesterday, I'm advised that we have around 270 engagements to the survey. In due course, the analysis of these submissions and the final plan will be presented through the Transport Advisory Group and I think eventually to full council. I trust this members have found this update useful and are happy to note the report accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner. Members, does anyone have any questions regarding this particular consultation for Councillor Sumner? Councillor Vickers?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, it was useful and excellent work by our officers. I have three questions, if I may, relating to the covering report, really. Firstly is that we heard in the budget last week by the Chancellor that there were, I think, 70% cuts to the funding in the cycling and walking strategy. So my first question is, have we any indication of what, if any, impact that will have on the LTP that's emerging? Second question is, I note paragraph 5.4 in your covering report, the reference to the increasing propensity to access services digitally. But would you not agree that this implies that perhaps the more vulnerable elderly and those without access to the internet for one reason or another are therefore a growing proportion of the digitally excluded and will need supported transport more than ever? And how does the LTP reflect this, if at all, at the moment? The third question is, and this is really reflecting a number of complaints I've received, sadly, about what is regarded by many as the waste of money on the A4 cycle lanes, which incidentally I support. Can we agree across this chamber that this whole idea of regular beauty contests, whereby every council has to spend an enormous amount of officer time making bids, which most of the time isn't successful, although in this council we are quite often successful, that is this not an efficient way of delegating money? And if we believe in true localism, we should just hand the money down and trust councils to spend it wisely. So those are my three questions.
Thank you, Councillor Vickers. My understanding with regards to active travel funding is that we are in the process of receiving some information at the moment of funding that we will be receiving. I haven't got and can't therefore release the actual detail on that. I am expecting that to be available probably within May rather than before, unfortunately, and that's something that's beyond our control is all I can say, really. Para 5.4, my interpretation of that is a reflection that actually people accessing services digitally means that less people are travelling to work. We know that through COVID, there was a mass shift in the amount of people that were able to work from home. Clearly not everybody, but I think those that have taken that step are still using that step in part, if not in full, and I'm certainly one of those. Your third question with regards to bids, yeah, I'd love the money to come down directly and not have to go through a bidding process. But I would pick up and agree with one point that you made within that, which is that we are exceptionally good, certainly within the Place Directorate, which is where I've obviously spent most of my time on as a portfolio holder, at putting those bids in and being successful.
Thank you, Dave. I just want to come back on that last point as well. Can I just clarify something on that? Because we've been doing a lot of work on it, actually, Councillor Vickers, because I think you're right, and I think it's wrong that we should go through this bidding process. And we have been making our voices very much heard through both the Local Government Association and our roles within, but also directly with our ministers for DULUC, saying that actually the time and capacity of officers to do these bids, and it's not just in Councillor Sumner's area, it's in lots of different areas, is not a good way of doing it. And that's why we're looking, and that's why devolution deals are on the table and lots of conversations going on. So I don't disagree in any way, shape or form around this bidding process. And the message is being given very clearly to our own ministers around the impact that has on local government across the piece. So no issue with that.
Thank you. I didn't really get the answer I was expecting to my second question. Yes, I accept that, you know, the change in working plans, but we're talking about the people that are not in work, maybe for good reasons, because of disability, old age, or inability to afford, or inability to use the internet. And the point is that, and it's a transport accessibility to services issue rather than commuting issue. And it seems to me that we are going to be facing an increasing need to provide services in the traditional way, because there are many people that can't access them online. And this is something that needs to be, I believe, reflected in the LTP before it comes to council for approval.
Okay, thank you. Noted, and hopefully that can be picked up in conversation as we continue to move through this process. And obviously always happy for your input in that.
Any other questions for Councillor Sumner? No, in which case the report is to note. I think that's duly noted, and we will continue down that pathway. So thank you, Councillor Sumner. Members, can we therefore move forward to item 7 on this evening's agenda, which is the Thatcham and Hungerford Town Centre strategies. Now, Councillor McKinnon has unfortunately been called away, and it has been very last minute. However, he has asked if I would present this as a member of the Economic Development Forum that has looked at this in detail. And I believe, Councillor Sumner, you're willing to second it as the other member that sits on that same forum.
Happy to do so, and I'll withhold my right.
Okay, I'm going to introduce the report. The town centre strategies for Thatcham and Hungerford have been developed by the council in partnership with Hemingway Design. Residents and stakeholders were consulted, including both town councils. Over 1,700 responses to our own online consultation were received, followed by final follow-up workshops and presentations with town councils and local stakeholders. It's important to note that the strategies identified areas of improvement for both town centres and suggest options for their implementation. The executive tonight is asked to approve the overall framework for town centre regeneration and development. We are not making decisions on which options or individual projects will be taken forward at this stage. Those decisions will be made in due course, dependent on further consultation with residents and stakeholders and funding being made available. There are some really exciting ideas in both strategies. In Thatcham, among other things, we'll explore ways to create a village centre-like quality at the Broadway, improve the parks and green spaces, create opportunities for independent and start-up businesses, and reduce the impact, noise and pollution from traffic circulating the Broadway. For Hungerford, we're keen to look at options to encourage tourism by promoting Hungerford's heritage, promote the use of the canal and green spaces for recreation and leisure, reduce the impact of traffic on the high street, and increase opportunities for independent cafes, restaurants, retails and other start-up businesses. There is significant work to be done to work up the proposals to the level of detail required to enable the prioritisation of projects in order to seek external funding from public and private sectors. Therefore, it is envisaged that in prioritisation of projects will be the first work stream for the town centre programme. Members, I'm going to open this to questions in a moment, but I just want to make clear there was an error in the recommendations, because it actually says here that the town centre strategies will be endorsed by council at both A and B. It is actually an executive function, so it is here tonight to ask for the executive's endorsement of these strategies. So members, do you have any particular questions with regards to this paper, which I will attempt to answer, but if not, I will make sure you get a written answer in response. Councillor Arderwater.
Thank you, Leader. I don't have a question so much as a statement of welcome for this work, and with an unashamedly Thatcham-centric view on it. We all, those who are members for and residents of Thatcham, know that much can be done to improve the town and village centre. And I do look forward to work over the coming months, indeed years, building on this initial strategy. There are some exciting opportunities here. And in particular, I'm really keen, for example, on the move of the library into the town centre itself, which will help grow footfall to the help and growth of shops and businesses and make it a more lively place. So again, lots of work to come, but I do welcome this report. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Ardwater. Members, any other questions? Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Just a technical question in terms of the recommendation. I appreciate that's an error, but does it change the substantive nature of the report, given that residents might not have commented if they thought it was going to be endorsed by council rather than the executive? You know, it's easy to have an error in a paper, but where does the error then stop the process?
I see a shake of the head from my legal officer next to me.
I hear a no, yeah,
No.
but the justification for why not would be interesting rather than just a flat no.
The contents of the report are quite clear on what's the executive have been asked to consider, and on that basis, I don't think the public are going to be misled on what's being looked at today.
I think it's the council have been asked to consider it in the
Thank
recommendation. So on to the substantive report, Leader. So we welcome the publication of a strategy for Thatcham and Hungerford. It was actually through conversations with the previous chief executive outside of the setting of a budget that in particular I requested that money was set aside for Thatcham and Hungerford. So I'm pleased to see that it's being spent at long last after a slight delay. What I would say in all honesty about the recommendations that have come out from Thatcham is I don't think there's anything new in there. I noted what you welcomed, and given that you were expecting Ross, you were very well briefed, Leader. It's a shame he couldn't afford it, his questions, his public questions to you. One of the things that the report calls out for is a community centre in the heart of the town. And Thatcham Town Council actually in 2009 purchased a building off of this council to deliver that exact remit with a library attached to it. And so I'd be interested to see Councillor Bowick tonight and whether he supports this paper. As I know when he was on the town council, he was one of the main voices calling for it to be disposed of. So that would be good to see if Councillor Bowick's mind has been changed and he agrees that we were correct all along and actually a community centre is needed in the heart of the town.
I think what we're saying is there's really exciting ideas that nothing has at this stage been decided upon, and that this will come down to further engagement with stakeholders and residents.
Yeah, well, okay, but your other portfolio holder just welcomed a library in the centre of Thatcham as well, which was the plan from 2009, which some of your members voted against happening. So it's nice that their minds have moved on and they've become progressive and realised the value of community buildings in the heart of a town centre. It talks about the open spaces and the parks within the town. And actually, most of the parks have well-equipped provision within them. It actually highlights one park in particular, so it probably shouldn't be parks, it should be Park, which is the Turnfield site. For those of you who know Thatcham, it's the park to the east of the town. But look, we'll see what residents make of the proposals. It needs to go out for more consultation. The first round of consultation that went out was very confusing. That was raised with officers at the time, if you recall, Leader. No logos of West Berkshire used. You didn't know who was asking the questions when it was out on Facebook. I'm sure Nigel will remember that we raised that with him at the time. And so now we have a document and some rough ideas around. I'm sure the public will now fully engage and give us their full view on them, and we'll see where that goes. But of course, we're always welcome any investment within Thatcham, even if it is long in the waiting and probably still doesn't get us to where we need to be as a town.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon. The 2 points that you raised, 2009 is a long time ago. And actually what we've recognised is the use of retail space has changed quite dramatically since 2009.
Yeah, it was 2015 when you tried to sell it.
So 2009 was the date you just quoted at me, and retail has changed even since 2015 in the fact that we've seen retail patterns change, and we've been working a lot with Hemingway Designs on this because we recognise that more and more people are doing online shopping and that the high streets need to change to keep up. And for me, the timing of this is perfect because it is very much about how do we keep our high streets current, recognising change will always happen from 2009 to 2015 to 2023. But I think it shows progressive nature of this council's administration to keep on top of that and make sure that we're continually looking ahead, depending on what the market is telling us and being led by the market itself. With regards to more consultation, I always welcome more consultation. I disagree that the previous consultation was confusing. It was specifically aimed at people that do not normally respond to our consultations, to try to get more young people engaged, so it was a very targeted piece of work that went on, deliberately trying to get those that have less voice heard to have the opportunity to respond, because I can't remember the name of the consultants, went through that in quite a lot of detail and depth at the time. So always welcome more consultation. So I think you can see in here that these are the exciting ideas, and there's a recognition that there needs to be further consultation with both residents and stakeholders. But thank you for your input. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Leader. A couple of questions, if I may. One is following up from the error that we've been told about. Had we known this was going to be decided tonight rather than referred up to council, we might have looked at it a little bit more closely, because and we would have wanted to see whether this was subject to call-in or not. Frankly, I'm not saying we would have called it in, but that's not something we do when it's something that's moving on to council. So just really making that point that it may seem a minor error, but sitting here as the shadow executive, we'd have liked to have been appraised of that sooner and had time to read the report in more detail. I mean, I also like what I see in the strategy, and having been a bit closer to what was done by the same consultants in Newbury, I know that the way they conduct consultation does successfully reach some of those hard to reach, and that's really important. But I was surprised because I've been spending quite a lot of time with the co-chair of the neighbourhood steering group, neighbourhood development plan steering group in Hungerford, and they were not aware of this consultation and weren't approached. Technically, they are independent of the town council, I believe. So although the town council was consulted, I wondered if it was not too late perhaps to check with what is being looked at by the Hungerford neighbourhood development people, because there might be some crossover there.
So thank you, Councillor Vickers, for your points. What I can say is there was a dedicated member session put on for this very paper to enable you to have full scrutiny. I'm sorry if you haven't read the paper, but everybody was invited along to question and answers to give you that very opportunity.
I did have a prior diary engagement.
Well, I apologise that we can't meet everybody's diary, but there was a briefing where there was full scrutiny available. And with regards to the consultation itself, it was widely publicised. Indeed, I took part in some of the publicity myself to try to make sure we got to as many different places as we possibly can. It's always a challenge when you're consulting to get to everybody, but I can assure you, having seen videos, posters, social media posts, residents' news bulletins, there was every attempt to make sure, and I'm apologies that whoever didn't pick it up, didn't pick it up. Councillor Cole, I did see your hand go up. Did you want to come in? You're more than welcome.
I'd certainly like to respond on that comment about the Hungerford neighbourhood plan. I was with two of the people who've been involved in that this morning, and they are entirely aware, and had been for weeks, that this decision was to be made here this evening. Totally clear.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Cole.
Would you like me to respond a little bit more on behalf of Hungerford?
Well, you're very welcome to ask a question or speak to the report. You're a member of this council, so you're more than welcome to do that.
As far as Hungerford's concerned, we thought that Hemingway Design did a really good job. Limited time. Of course, it's not perfect, but we would actually like to see those consultants in Hungerford again, because they made people think. we found their knowledge of other towns really beneficial. Congratulations to whoever appointed them. We all know that that report is not perfect, but as a starter, it's wonderful. It's a great start, and we all hope that you will let this through. I found it interesting last night listening to the Thatcham part of it, where in effect, and the Hemingway people were saying this, you've got similar problems, but with very different answers, very different potential results coming out of what they are proposing. It's a long job though. This is a program of projects that will take quite a number of years. Yes, there are quick wins, but a lot of them are going to take time. But as far as Hungerford's concerned, we all know this is not a done deal as far as the details concerned. We really do look forward to going with this, and we hope that you will let this continue.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. I think, yes, I think the work that has been done on all the town centres, and they actually Hemingway have done all of that work now. So we've got the Newbury Town Centre Master Plan, Hungerford, Thatcham, has been very welcomed. And I think it is all about making sure we remain current. We were very fortunate to get some dedicated funding through, only announced today, to deliver some of the Newbury Town Master Plan around the wharf and everything else. It will be very much, and Councillor Vickers, this is where I do come in and respond around this piecemeal, getting the funding to enable us to do this and how we prioritise and everything else. And for me, that has to be led by those areas. And that's why the engagement and consultation, this is a start of a process, and I fully appreciate it's going to take time to deliver. But I think to be progressive, we need to continue to look to the future, which was so important why we started this and got the consultation that we did. So thank you for that, Councillor Cole. Members, any further thoughts on this, or are we all happy to move with the recommendations? They are laid out in Councillor Sumner. Apologies. Councillor Sumner, you would like to second this paper, and I'm moving on without you. I apologise.
I will not take it. I refuse to take it personally. Thank you, Leader. But I just wanted to make a few comments based on, as much as anything else, the conversation last night as is tonight. If it's of any use, Councillor Vickers, my understanding is the Q&A session last night was recorded. No good for now, I grant you, but you'll hopefully be able to tune into that and see the conversation that took place. Because the conversation that took place, I think, was largely positive, and James was on that meeting as well. And yeah, you look at the conversation and the consultation and the designs that are coming forward already, they really do look very positive. Two very different areas. Hungerford, for me, very linear, and the area at Thatcham that we're talking about, very much a side shoot from the main road going through. One of the things that I requested is that we make sure, certainly for Thatcham, that consultation reaches right across the other side of Thatcham. And I say that because if there's anything that impacts the traffic flow in the middle of it, for me, if I was driving that way, I'd go straight out Flora Way and around the outside. And I'm sure not everybody that lives up in that, and you've got some members that live over that way, would appreciate that. So there's a lot of detail.
Other routes are available.
Absolutely, they are. Yeah, go down the M4, damn it. But it's important to note that the clarity of that conversation was that the detail is yet to be achieved, and I think we need to hold on to that. But I'm absolutely thrilled to be able to second this. I think this is a very large step on a very long ladder, but hopefully the residents in both of those areas will see the benefit coming through fairly quickly. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner. Yes, the recommendations are that we endorse these strategies, that the council the executive seeks to take forward the delivery of the strategies in partnership with key stakeholders, as laid out in 2.1. The only amendment to 2.1 is it should be the executive, not the council. Executive members, can I see by a show of hands if you are in favour of that recommendation? That therefore has been carried. Can we move forward then to item 8 on the agenda, which is the renewal of the BBOUT Partnership for Countryside Management? And Councillor Sumner, I believe you're going to introduce.
I am, Leader, thank you.
And does that find a seconder?
Yes, it does, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Ardwater. Over to you, Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Leader. And I just want to make one point clear before I start saying anything else. Councillor Vickers, I don't want you to be confused with the fact that I was bought it as a Christmas present.
Sorry, Councillor Sumner, can I think Councillor Pattenden, are you coming in with a declaration at this late point?
We also have family membership of people, so thank you.
He had to check, yeah. Okay, we will take that late declaration. Back to you, Councillor Sumner.
New news coming through now. Yes, it wasn't from them. It was from my partner, but it was a Christmas present, and it was something that I'd spoken about. Having attended an event at Christmas, in fact, where I was absolutely intrigued with what they were talking about. So this report sets out the current arrangement the council has with Berkshire, Buckinghamshire and Oxfordshire Wildlife Trust, BBOUT, for those that have been around here long enough, for the management of this council's countryside assets, and to seek approval for the continuation of this arrangement for a further 10-year term. I think everyone would accept that the partnership between West Berkshire Council and BBOUT has delivered some fantastic results to West Berkshire and its residents over the last 9 years. Placing these highly valued assets into the management of an organisation with the necessary expertise to develop their capacity to support key species and to balance the needs of these species, some of which are rare or threatened, against the needs of the wider public for leisure and recreation. Wildlife and habitats across the council's key countryside sites have seen a considerable improvement over this time. Hopefully members will have seen the seasonal Warden's report for 2022 included within this report on page 209, and that provides an excellent picture of the detailed work that's being carried out across the area. Recommendations are detailed in 2.1, page 189, to approve the continuation of the current partnership and to delegate authority for negotiation and make suitable arrangements to the Service Director. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Ardwater, are you reserving your rights? Do you want to come in at the end, or do you want to speak now?
I'll come in at the end. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, members, do you have any questions or anything for Councillor Sumner? I was just going to say I completely welcome this report, Councillor Sumner, as someone that uses Snelsmore Common, which is on my ward, on almost a daily basis. I see the work that is done, and it is very impressive in the way that they're able to blend human interaction with our environment. So I'm fully supportive of this, and look forward to seeing the continued work up at Snelsmore. Councillor Vickers.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'm full of praise for BBOUT, but their priority is conservation rather than public access, and that's being an ongoing discussion in the Local Access Forum and specifically on the Greenham and Crookham Commons Commission, which I'm also a member of. I suppose I should declare that as well. But I mean, I'm a member of that on behalf of the Local Access Forum, on which I'm a member on behalf of this council on a cross-party basis, and I have been for a long time. Now, my question is about it reflects Appendix 1, which is the sort of standard equalities, impact and disability. We are not good in our country parks at providing facilities for the disabled compared with some local authorities. And it's something that Local Access Forum keeps going on about. And I'm not sure whether this, I couldn't find from the papers before us, whether this comes within the BBOUT contract to, for example, arrange for the supply of disabled mobility scooters that, would save some people who have very limited mobility, but not such limited mobility that they possess their own wheelchair, say. It is something that other councils have done, which is to provide them for hire. I know there's only, I think, Snelsmore where there are facilities for a managed person on site. But could that be looked at? Because I think it's something that is in accord with our priorities as a council and should be done by somebody, whether it's by us as a council out of our funding or whether it's embedded within the BBOUT contract. That's my only issue. But again, it relates back to the last week's budget and the cuts in the central government funding towards walking and cycling and public access.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Vickers. I think public access is always something that we need to be mindful of. I would totally accept that. I don't understand it. I don't believe, let me rephrase that, I don't believe it is part of the contract. But the conversations with BBOUT are ever growing. So there's no reason why that can't become a conversation that we will move forward. I think we also need to look at the fact that there are two areas that need to work together and dovetail in, and PROWS will be the other one, public rights of way, to make sure that work is being done on both sides that complements. But certainly that's a point that I'm sure officers will be picking up immediately, looking to my left and getting nodded at, and we can pick up that conversation with them.
Thank you. Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thank you. This is the bit where I put my Greenham Parish hat on for a while, because obviously Greenham Common was in that parish and BBOUT managed that for us. So let's start with, if I was sitting on the opposite side, would I not renew the contract? No, I think I would renew the contract, because finding another body that can do the work would be quite difficult. So that's not where I'm coming from. However, we should be aware, and Councillor Vickers alluded to it, that they have a priority. It's the priority we set for them to look after the animals first, the wildlife, if you like, and that's fine. However, places like Greenham Common, Snailsmoor Common as well for that matter, has a great deal of public access to it. And in fact, Greenham Common is a very specific case in that it was returned, and there have been many issues. So to the point where Greenham Parish actually ran a survey itself of what people's thoughts were in the parish about access to the common. And it was only just over 50% that said things were fine as they are. Now, it was over 50%, so that's good. But there is a number of people that say, hang on a minute, allowing just 8 or 9 or 10% of an area as vast as that for public access isn't the right balance. Now, when BBOUT are brought forward to discuss this, they do so in a very defensive way. So what I'd be looking to do in this contract, this period, is to have a polite word with them about how they interact with other bodies and the public interest, and start to say, well, okay, yes, we understand what you're saying, and be able to come back, even if we have some KPIs, so that they are aware that, as important as the wildlife is, and it is exceptionally important, people and their access is also important. And in not every area can be dedicated totally to wildlife. And that's with my portfolio hat on as well as the environment. So that is a high priority for me. So it's difficult for me to say, but we need to reflect what the public want, not just what BBOUT want. So I hope I've made that clear.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Abbs. I think there would appear to be at least 3, if not 4 organisations then that need to be having conversations, because Greenham Common Commission also need to be engaged in that as at the right level, and with making sure that everybody has got the same understanding and the same desire to move in the same direction, I think.
And exactly. There's several of those people are members of Greenham Parish Council as well. And so that whole conversation was had about where the priority lies, how the priority is assigned, and so on and so on. All I'm saying is that I think we have an opportunity, if we're going to renew the contract, to just put some KPIs in there, a little bit of conversation about how they interact and how the public interest is taken into account, as well as the wildlife.
Yeah, I think, thank you. And that's noted. And again, that will be taken forward. I think, and again, I can only go with my experience. In my experience, they've always been really good at interaction and supportive of everything that we're trying to do and trying to achieve. And I reflect especially through the COVID period as to, public access at that point when the only time that people got to go out was to exactly those sort of places that you're referring to. So yeah, point noted, and we will make sure that we have the suitable conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you both. I've got Councillor Bowick, then Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to give a bit of insight to Councillor Abbs of what goes on at the Greenham and Crookham Common Management Commission, of which I was once a member. They have to balance conflicting interests, and it's an extremely difficult task for them. They have to balance the commoners and graziers' rights, who have right to use the land for their cattle, with the public access and the the requirement in law to preserve the common in its historic state, and so it's always a very difficult balancing act. And I take your point completely that more access would be nice, but something would have to give. Something would perhaps not be. Other people would be disadvantaged. It's a very difficult balancing act for the Commission.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that information, but you kind of presupposed I didn't know what that body did, but thank you anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I don't disagree with anything that's been said. I just wanted to call out the one Beeb site that hasn't been mentioned, which we call the jewel in the crown in Thatcham, which is obviously the lakes. And what we've actually seen there is an improvement of the cafe facility. The outdoor seating area is now wind protected, which has completely transformed the amount of usable space there, as well as the internal changes. We've also seen a new park built there, replacing the old wooden climbing frames as well. However, it does come back to the access issue, which is, when you're walking, well, a lake is a circular walk. So it's all, taking a lot of footfall, and there are areas where it does get really hard to pass, particularly if you've got a buggy. And yet, it's very popular with young mums, given that there's the coffee and stuff there as well, tea and coffee hut. And Councillor Vickers' point about access vehicles, actually, the Discovery Centre could be a good place to host it as well, because you've got staff in there. I know in the report it does talk about outcomes. It talks about habitats, whether they've improved favourable or not, and then it talks about a KPI that Beeb set themselves, which is about if reserves are rich in wildness, and it says it's 87%. It says this is just short of the 95% that we set ourselves. I'm not sure 87% is just short of 95%. And so I think what I'd be interested in, Councillor Somner, is again, how do they plan to get from 87 to 95, that journey? How do they bridge that journey? And just like other colleagues have said, how do we, keep them true to access as well as wildlife protection? Thank you.
Yeah, fair points all. And I think it goes back to the same answer, in all honesty, Councillor Dillon, which is, I'm sorry, to get a whip out and make them do it. It's all part of the conversations that need to take place. I think the purpose of this paper, more than anything else, is to understand firstly what they are able to do and what we're able to provide for our residents in partnership with them, but also to make sure that what we've got is something that is seamless. We have no break in that partnership, and I think that's the emphasis for me. I absolutely take your point, all points made, that actually conversation and looking at what's provided and how the funding that's there is best used for everybody. That's absolutely key.
Thank you. I think, yes, I was going to say, I think we're all violently agreeing that actually the recommendations are good. So I'm going to go over to Councillor Ardwater.
Yes, thank you. And again, I welcome the fact that we're in broad consensus here, that we do welcome a good, strong, and certainly a very effective partnership with Beeb over the last years since 2014. And I believe we're all going to unanimously support an extension for a further 10 years. Yes, interesting points about the conflict between human access and wildlife. And obviously a wildlife trust naturally will have wildlife as is its prime objective, and maybe there certainly is some more thought there that we need to think about as to what extent can and should we accommodate people walking versus people cycling versus mobility, and of course the nature. And it's not too harsh to say that if there are no people at all having any access, then wildlife would be in a much stronger place. But overall, I think this is really encouraging, and I look forward to Beeb improving our wildlife assets still further over the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the executive needs to resolve the recommendations at 2.1, which is to continue, and I hear broad support, although lots of conversations to be ongoing, and then to delegate the authority to do so over to the service lead and service director. Members, can I see by show of hands if you are in favour of those recommendations?
I can confirm that's been carried.
Thank you. Therefore, can we move on to item 9 on this evening's agenda, which is a response to referred place motions by Councillor Arderwater is going to introduce the report. And I believe Councillor Sumner, this is like a double act, isn't it, is going to respond.
It's like the perfect marriage, leader. Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Arderwater, over to you.
Yes, thank you, leader. Firstly, I must apologise to all members of the council, not just those here, for the fact that some of these motions are very elderly. And while there has been a lot of action to do with parts of them, this formal resolution has in some cases stretched back far too far into the past. So again, I apologise on behalf of the officers by way of not mitigation but or explanation for this, but in terms of context, dealing with a motion absorbed an awful lot of time, of which, as we all know, there is a finite amount, and indeed there are a whole raft of other things to be done. So responding to motions, and good they are, I'll come on to the substance in a minute, has to be balanced alongside delivery of our overall strategy. As you will see from the table in the recommendations table in section 2, the recommended path for these various motions, reaching back to Councillor Brooks's in 2021 around booking systems at HWRCs, up to Councillor Abbs's on domestic energy efficiency, has quite rightly varied. And in almost all cases, there has been value extracted from them, even if the recommendation, which I fully endorse, is not to accept the formal full motion as is. So again, I welcome and I thank all members for having submitted these motions. They have definitely improved our overall strategy and the scope and the input of ideas to them. I am aware, and I also welcome the fact that officers are working on a better process for handling motions. And I think we should expect a much speedier resolution, or at least processing of similar actions in the future. So again, I thank members, and I endorse this report to executive. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Arderwater. And I will just follow up that apologies for the response to some of these motions and petitions going forward. The monitoring officer has shared with me a central register to make sure that we do this fairly and we respond in a timely way and take them, because I'm aware that there's several outstanding from different times, and we're trying to get officer capacity and time to respond to those in the order in which they've come in. So the monitoring officer has already put together a central register, which I've seen, and everyone will be on there going forward in the future and will be brought to us to a central point with us, because some of these do go out into services, and then it can be, if the services haven't responded and various reasons for that can be very valid reasons, I have to say. So, you know, if it's something around planning, the priority's been the local plan, and therefore they've been making sure that they put those responses in first, but we are conscious of trying to get that balance right. So I would just echo Councillor Arderwater's thoughts on that. So members, do you have any question with regards to the actual responses to the motions? Councillor Bridgman.
Leader, thank you. Not really a question. The particular motion that interested me at the time, because I did form a different view at the time to what was proposed, was Councillor Brooks' motion on the booking system for the HWRCs. Because my perception at the time, and it's been borne out by experience, is that the system is working very efficiently, and you can get a booking, well, certainly in our case for Padworth, at very short notice. Indeed, I've booked in the morning for the afternoon. And our residents appear to like that. They are certain of not having to queue. They know they can go there and do whatever they need to do at the HWRC. And I think that actually improves the usage of the HWRCs if our residents know that they can turn up with a reasonable notice on a booking system, which is working very well. That it seems to be, from my perspective, very efficient, and the officers at the site are very helpful. So I think the system's working, and I think it ain't broke, don't fix it. So there you go.
Thank you for that feedback, Councillor Bridgman. Any others? I saw Councillor Dillon first. I've got Councillor Vickers and Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thank you. When we next get a report like this, following that timetable, where it says, and Councillor Ardell-Waters, I accept what you were saying about taking some of the ideas away and delivering them, but, you know, under Councillor Culver, she's got not here, no, a couple of motions down. It says a number of the proposals have been taken forward by the council. But I think they need to be listed if you've taken them forward, because you've almost adopted half of a motion, maybe, or a quarter of a motion. I think it's right that the public see which bits you've taken forward within this paper. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, and if I could briefly respond, Councillor, that's a very good point, and you should find detailed commentary to that in the appendices to this. So I'm just quickly trying to scan to, for example, Councillor Culver's Appendix E, is it?
I think my point is about making it easy for residents. You're having to scroll.
I've demonstrated the point myself, yes.
Okay, point taken. Thanks, Councillor Dillon. Councillor Vickers.
Yes, I'm referring to the motion that I proposed, which I think got broad cross-party support, but I would disagree with the statement in the report, which says that the first of the two calls for action within the motion is now, as it said, the situation has moved on as described above, and so there's no immediate call to support the current campaign. Well, the campaign is ongoing and there is an immediate and urgent need. And again, it goes back to the funding levels that are going towards this. Yes, the method of funding is there, the legislation is there, but when it comes to the many ways in which funding has been agreed in theory to go towards environmental land management schemes, and there are 15 different themes, only one of which is public access, that one theme has got zilch funding applied to it. So it's all words and no action, I'm afraid, there. And we need to press for this. The CPRE is still, and I quote from CPRE Berkshire's latest call, which is saying, you know, that the last of their priorities to enable people of all ages and abilities to stay healthy and enjoy our environment by reconnecting with nature in safe, accessible local countryside. The government has done a U-turn on cancelling the deadline for restoring lost public rights of way. It's now saying there will be a deadline, whereas only 6 months ago it said there won't be. So we are now threatened with losing what we've got. And we're also getting no funding to improve upon what we've got. And I cannot see landowners and farmers backing the legislation if they don't get the money to reward them for providing what it says. So I do say we need to keep the campaign going, because until the public, the urban dwelling public, understand how our food gets to their table, they're not going to be supporting the very good work that farmers have to take. So I think we need to be putting money where our mouth is as a government and as a council to ensure. And I know the second action, I agree, the Rural Business Forum is a really good step in the right direction. And yes, that action is still outstanding and it will go on for a number of years. And it seems to be the only way we're going to get funding is by begging and working with local people. And I'm every hope we will success there. But if there's money, you know, where is the Brexit bonus here? We were supposed to get all this CAP money going, among other things, to public access. None of it's going there, and not much of it is going into food production if you talk to farmers.
Thank you, Councillor. Again, if I may respond briefly. Firstly, you've raised some interesting points there, and I will ask officers to look into this again. However, on your final point of, well, just to paraphrase very loosely your statement, there is no about the Brexit bonus and money and so forth. I would say that a lot of this should be being delivered through the Agriculture Act, which is still moving at a very, very slow pace. I do agree, but it is one of the expectations. Yes, the government has and the industry has to balance food production with public goods, biodiversity and public access. I would expect and I would want to see, exactly as you said, those benefits coming as well. But my point is that not that nothing's happened, it hasn't happened yet. Yeah, I too agree with you. We need to continue to press for those good benefits of this to be delivered. Thank you.
Thank you both. Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just to come back to Councillor Brooks's motion that's mentioned in here, the booking system, many options have been offered, and I don't think anybody's saying that the ability to book is now, we would want to go away from that. However, there's been a suggestion many times to actually introduce a two-tier system. Those that wish to book can book, and they're assured a slot, and then there's a separate lane for those who wish to turn up and wait. And you know, that would be something very easy to kind of accommodate, but we don't seem to that. And then we have the High Street canopy motions, which is just down here, so it's rejected. Okay, but during the budget discussion, the Greens put forward an amendment and asked for £25,000, was it, for urban trees, which is basically the same thing. So we're just playing politics with the words here, really. So the Lib Dems come along with a motion that identifies particular issues and asks you to fix it. Oh no, we'll reject that. Oh, I know, we can play a bit of politics. Let's approve that little green thing over there. It's not worthy of us as councillors. We need to be better than this. Just ignoring domestic energy and saying, oh, we haven't got enough staff right now, when it's probably one of the highest priorities we've got. I don't understand the delay. And I can't really accept the delay just by saying we haven't got enough officers. It's just, yeah, that's a choice you're making as to how you hire and how you assign. It wouldn't be my priority because it's one of the biggest problems we have. And I'll hold my fire on defibrillators because that's next. But you know, one comment I will make in there: there's, God blimey, it's taken a long time for something that was meant to be tactical. Thank you.
And so thank you again, Councillor Abbs, for those comments. Firstly, it's a false analogy to say that we certainly do not play party games and support Greens with money for an identical motion to yours, because yours was explicitly around high street canopies, wasn't it? It was about the idea
and theirs was about urban trees.
Urban trees, and they are different because high streets are not the same as urban, and as we know, there are parks and there are suitable places to plant trees. High streets with sewers and water mains and all the rest are far more complex and so forth. So no, they're not the same thing. And as I've mentioned, as you know, with your energy motion, we are very keen to progress that. Unfortunately, funds are not limitless. There are other priorities to be delivered. It will happen, but one needs to exercise a bit of patience. So again, I welcome
just to remind everybody that this was a motion that was meant to be implemented this year, not next. It was meant to affect this year.
Councillor Arderwater is entitled to answer to you. And
sorry, Leader. No, it's just what you're not letting the truth out. I'll stop with your gavel, blimey. Yeah.
Please leave the meeting.
No.
Clark, can I say?
Okay, no, I'm going to listen to my leader. I'm not listening to you.
Respect.
For you, yes.
Complete lack of respect, Councillor Dillon, from your members. I've never had to do this in 4 years. Councillor Arderwater is trying to respond, and he's telling me to be quiet. That's complete lack of respect. Please leave my meeting.
No.
Can I, Leader, can I just take advice from the officers in terms of your ability to eject from the meeting?
As an elected council, I refuse to leave this meeting.
I'll give Councillor Dillon a few moments to speak to his member.
Leader, I was going to be leaving anyway. I was starting to pack up before this, so if you may excuse me. Got to go and sing.
I understand that you have the right to call the police if I don't leave this meeting now. So I'm going to make a small statement, then I will leave. Because of the, I'm sorry, everybody. Councillor Cole was allowed to make it. Thank you very much. I don't. Turning the mic. Really not.
Members, I suggest we all defer for 5 minutes and leave the room while Councillor Abbs gets himself together.
I'm very
Okay, members. Members, if I could ask you to take your seats again. I have to explain to you, and I'm going to ask my legal advisor to read out a certain section of the Constitution. First of all, I can only apologise to members and members of the public watching. I have to say, within my 8 years of being a councillor, I have never seen such behaviour in this chamber, and I don't think it's the norm of your party, Councillor Dillon, in any way, shape or form. We've never had this situation arise before, but there is a constitution that says that if people are elected to this council, there is a way that they need to behave and there is a constitution that they need to follow. I'm going to ask the legal representative of this evening's meeting to read that particular part out to you all so you can understand what just happened here when we asked a member to leave this chamber.
Thank you. Under 5.14.1, If at a meeting of the executive, a member persistently disregards the ruling of the executive leader or behaves irregularly, improperly or offensively, or willfully obstructs the business of the executive, any member may move that the member named may not be heard further, that the member named shall leave the meeting, and if the motion is seconded, be put to a vote without discussion. 5.14.2, suspension of the sitting. If there is a general disturbance or if the named member or member of the public continues to misbehave after a motion under Rule 5.9.4 has been carried and orderly business is prevented, the executive leader may adjourn the meeting for as long as they consider necessary.
Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon.
Yeah. So leader, we respect that the chair of a meeting needs to be able to chair the meeting. However, what was just read out wasn't what happened. And the monitoring officer didn't say, leader, sorry, you need to call a vote. So I think that look, there were tempers there and there was emotion, but it also didn't happen in the constitutional way because there was not a motion seconded. I suspect it would have been carried, but there wasn't. So we just need to bear in mind that when we are using powers such as that, officers should be directing you, leader, with the correct advice so that it can be done in the correct procedural manner. Thanks.
And that point's taken, Councillor Dillon. I knew I was able to stand to ask to leave, and I knew that I was able to adjourn, but I didn't know the correct procedure in the moment in time. So I accept that point. Members, we do still have a lot of business of the evening to get through. So if we can carry on, please. I would like to, we were in the middle of item 10. I believe, Councillor Pattenden, you had a question for, oh, sorry, item 9, apologies. You had a question for Councillor Arderwater.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah. Through you, Leader, Councillor Arderwater, how long would it normally take? You know, is there a target for when motions like this should be answered, and how much resource is necessary in order to be able to do that?
So thank you for your question, Councillor Paddington. As I said, or as I perhaps should make slightly clearer, there is currently no defined period within which a motion must be responded to. Motions vary hugely in terms of complexity, the amount of resource needed to research, degree of contentiousness or otherwise. And so it's not sensible to stipulate a rule which says all motions should be fully dealt with within a given timescale. Many can and should be dealt with quicker, and others, more complex ones, can, as in some of the cases here in this report, be broken down and partially implemented and delivered, and other parts after due consideration rejected. So I don't think we're going to see, it wouldn't be wise, I feel, for a process of a blanket target. Definitely very good to have a target for an initial response indicating the length of time it will take for a full response after that. But I look forward to see officers' considerations of what the leader was saying about a process for handling all motions in a regular, fair and orderly manner.
Thank you, everybody. I don't see any hands, so I'm going to go to you, Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Leader. Not much else to add. The only other thing that I would add to the point just raised by Councillor Pattenden is that what we fall into, for a better way, want of a better way of putting it, is the cycle of the meetings. That's where the delays quite often will be inevitable, I suppose, to a point. So if something comes to full council, gets referred to PAG, we have to wait for the next PAG meeting, but we also have to make sure that we can get it on the agenda. So it's things like that I'm also looking forward to see coming through an officer's recommendation. I mean, I can't really say any more about the delays. I too share the concerns, and I've had some through me or colleagues on my side of the room. So, you know, again, this happens right across. Councillor Linden, I'm sure we won't mind me mentioning his name, had one for fire sprinklers, and it took far too long for a variety of reasons. I think the responses that we've got are broadly acceptable. I would like to think that those members that are named as the raiser of it would have a view, and hopefully those conversations can carry on where they need to. Other than that, I'm happy to second as it is.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner. Members, you're asked to agree the recommendations for each of the 7 motions as set out in the table on pages 275 to 277 of the report. Can I see a show of virtual hands for all those in favour? Oh, physical, sorry.
Thank you. I can confirm that's been carried.
Thank you, everybody.
Leader, I was abstaining because I left the room.
Thank you, Councillor Bridgman. You did tell me that. Apologies. Can we therefore move to item 10, which is the motion to cancel on defibrillators? Councillor Bridgman, I believe you're going to introduce this report.
Indeed, Leader.
And does that find a seconder? Councillor Berwick, thank you. Over to you, Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Leader. And this is really a report which I'm bringing it forward not so much as portfolio holder, but as chairman of the Health and Wellbeing Board. And had Councillor Abbs been in the room, I would have apologised to him for the fact that it has taken time to come to executive. But I would have actually, what has just been asked by Councillor Pattenden about timescales, I think is quite well served by this motion. If I talk us through the timescales and then identify where the lacuna crept in and why it's didn't come to executive. The original motion was put to the council meeting of the 8th of July 2021. And as is in the report, the chairman of council decided that it should come to executive, but via the Health and Wellbeing Board, which I suggest is absolutely the right thing to have done. There was a meeting of the Health and Wellbeing Board on the 22nd of July 2021, so only 14 days after the motion, and obviously officers had to do some work in anticipation of bringing it before the Health and Wellbeing Board. So it didn't come to the meeting of the 22nd of July, it then came to the next meeting, which was the 30th of September. And at that meeting, the suggestion from officers that there should be quite a detailed investigation into the circumstances of defibrillators in the community was agreed by, and there's a Councillor Abbs was in the meeting, and there was a discussion about what should be done, and the Health and Wellbeing Board resolved 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 actions to look at the question of defibs, look at the question of using telephone boxes for them, and so on and so forth. So it was a detailed list of things to be done. So that report then didn't come to the next meeting of the Health and Wellbeing, nor the one after that. It came to the May meeting in 2022. And if you look at the agenda for that meeting, it is a detailed response with some suggestions. And at the meeting in May 22, a series of proposals was put forward, and it was resolved that the Health and Wellbeing Board did things rather than the executive did things. And the Health and Wellbeing Board went out to contact all of the members to remind them of the system of members' bids in order to, because there had been a number of members' bids and there continued to be members' bids. And I welcome, as I said at the time in Health and Wellbeing, I welcome members' bids for defibs. Signposted town and parish councils to funding sources, reminded town and parish councils of the need to keep the AEDs maintained, encouraged South Central Ambulance Service to identify any units that needed refurbishing, considered a training course for first aid training in schools and so on and colleges, and looked to get the public involved in downloading the Save a Life app, because that's the app that allows you to identify a defib. And indeed, there were members' bids for defibs. We identified a couple of defibs that we didn't know about. So that work really resulted in what I would suggest the council needed to do. What didn't happen, of course, was the final bit of the circle, bringing that report effectively back to executive for, as you are now being asked, essentially to note what Health and Wellbeing, I would suggest that what you're being asked to do tonight is note what Health and Wellbeing Board have done and basically endorse it. Community proposals for installation will be supported through the members' bids programme with certain parameters about where those defibs should be, but not taking a default position of adopting all of the phone boxes, which was the underlying piece in the motion, adopting telephone boxes, because the investigation indicated, firstly, there are actually very few telephone boxes left to put defibs in. They were also being adopted for all sorts of other reasons. We've seen books put in them and for plants put in them and so on and so forth. But also that defibs shouldn't just be in phone boxes, we should be putting them all over the shop. So I am encouraging town and parish councils to get involved in putting more defibs into the community. I'm encouraging members to go down the process of members' bids for defibs, but I am suggesting that to close the loop, executives should adopt the recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Bridgman. Somebody sat through Speen Parish Council's meeting last night discussing where to put our defib, which my members' bid has contributed to. I fully endorse the report, and I know that the work is happening. So thank you for that. Does anyone have any specific questions for?
Not a question, but just a response, if I may.
Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you, Councillor Bridgman, for that response, and for the work that the Health and Wellbeing Board have done. They've clearly gone away, done a number of actions. I don't think the motion was saying only in phone boxes. So, you know, having them in phone boxes doesn't preclude having them in sports pavilions, etc. But I think that having the Health and Wellbeing Board, having gone away and done the research, you know, have only found, I think it said 2 live phone boxes in the district still. I think that this is an adequate response. I think part of Councillor Abbs's motion was about this council taking some responsibility for the provision of defibs and it not just being a parish council issue or a voluntary issue. But, you know, with the support of the members' bid programme, then obviously West Berkshire funds can go towards those defibs. And we have to encourage members to put more bids in to be able to fill all of those holes. So thank you for the consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon. Anything? No. Okay. Anything else anyone wants to say? In which case, over to you, Councillor Bowick.
Thank you, Leader. I fully support this motion and nothing further to add.
Thank you. Therefore, members, you have a recommendation in front of you this evening. Can I ask for a show of hands for all those in favour of that recommendation as laid out in the report?
I can confirm that recommendation has been approved.
Thank you all. We then come to item 11, which is the Achievement and Progress Report. This report is in my name and I felt it was important to bring it forward because I know we had the opportunity at full council last week, and I'm sorry you can make that, Councillor Dillon, to talk about some of the achievements and thank officers and everything else, but I felt it was really important. I've always believed that you need to plan. You know, and if you plan properly, then you can deliver what you set out to deliver. And for me, I think back to May 2019, where we set out with the council plan that clearly articulated our strategy of what we needed to deliver here in West Berkshire. We knew that the council delivers over 700 services and we needed to keep those services going. And very much that's around our business as usual services. So you'll hear about things like making sure that our waste is regularly collected, making sure that we have good lighting services, making sure that our roads are kept in good condition, making sure we have social care. So there is a lot of work that goes on within the council. And what we need to do as elected members, and I think all elected members will agree this, is agree where we need to prioritise focus based on the needs of the district. And that's what we did back in 2019. So we set ourselves some areas that we recognise. And I don't think there was much sort of disagreement in particular, although I know my colleagues across the room did not support the plan, but I don't think actually the areas of focus that many people disagreed with, and they were really around ensuring that our vulnerable children and adults receive better outcomes. And I've always been absolutely clear on the vision here in West Berkshire that we know that the majority of our residents get good outcomes. They achieve good health outcomes, they achieve good educational outcomes, they achieve good work, environmental and everything else outcomes. But we do recognise that there is a portion within our communities that don't. And to prioritise when you have limited resources, our focus on those more vulnerable in our community, I believe, and this council's believed and followed it through, that should be our priority and focus, recognising that those that can manage will go on and manage, but we need to prioritise our resources towards our most vulnerable. And I'm incredibly proud of the work that's been done there. We've got Paul Coe as our executive director, interim executive director of people with us. But when I think about the work that's been done in our children's services, particularly around Ofsted and good Ofsted reports and some of the delivery of the Supporting Families programme, I'm incredibly pleased to know that that safety net is here in West Berkshire. We have our looked after children, and Councillor Bowick's done a fantastic job of making sure that the corporate parent panel, those of us that do attend it, remain focused on achieving the needs of those children. And they're the type of things that I feel that we need to do here in West Berkshire. And I don't think many of you would disagree with that. We want to help everybody reach their full potential, and this is really around education. And I don't think anybody would say that our educational system has to be able to support our children and young people. And the things that we do to do that is our capital investment into schools, and that is critical because it makes sure that we have the school places for children in the local area to go to, and they get a school of their choice. And we make sure we have our schools improvement teams here working really closely with our schools across the piece to make sure that the schools are delivering a good service or an outstanding service to our children. So those two were probably very much at my heart when I was portfolio holder for children and young people. I'm pleased to see what's been delivered over the last 4 years. Whenever I think about how you look at an area, I always think that you have to get a balance between 3 things, and that's your social, economic and environmental. So the other areas are very much looking at how you do that, and that was around making sure that our businesses can start and develop and thrive here in West Berkshire. It's why we prioritise getting grants out to those businesses at their biggest time of need during COVID. It's why we've invested into that particular team to make sure that businesses are supported here, and will continue to do so. We know that we need the infrastructure to enable that. So that's where we need to make sure we've got a local plan, and we are plan-led rather than developer-led, and the work around making sure we have the infrastructure continues. So we heard tonight about the transport consultation plan. All of these melt together to make sure we get the right infrastructure across West Berkshire. We looked at maintaining a green district as one of the priorities, but obviously we all declared, and every single one of us declared, a climate emergency back in 2019. And the work that's been done and the team that have come into place for delivery of that environment strategy, I think, is an excellent example of how we've delivered against our plans. And then sustainability through innovations and partnerships. We've seen some fantastic innovations, the climate bond, first in the country. We've got fantastic partnerships. You've talked about them today. Perhaps one of the most successful partnerships, I believe, is the hub model that we've been working with Greenham Trust and the Volunteer Centre West Berkshire. So I felt it was important to stop and reflect. I felt it was important to say, we've had one plan, this is where we've got to that plan. And I wanted to get us all to focus on how that plan has gone forward and succeeded. The next paper is where we go next, but I felt it was just the right opportunity in this last executive of this administration to bring this forward to you. So I would ask that you all note the plan. I'm more than happy to take any particular questions on the plan of what we've delivered to date, but this is why I brought that forward for you to note this evening. So Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Leader. Not a question, but an observation which I'm proud of, and that's the support and the dedication of all the officers within certainly place, because that's where I sit in my portfolio. There are numerous mentions within the report, rightly so, about how highways and green spaces are looked after and developed, about, as I mentioned earlier, about how planning service is committed to change. And I think that's the key word for me. It's about the commitment. It's our vision and it's officers' commitment with our engagement and steer, which is delivering so many of these things. And it is actually heartening to see the amount of things that we are doing as an authority. Absolutely welcome the report, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner. Oh, I've got Councillor Bowick.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you for your kind words about children and young people and education. I had a few notes I made here that I wanted to speak to, but you touched on much of what.
Apologies if I.
No, that's absolutely fine. I'm happy to repeat that we're doing a great job for our children at schools. With 90% of our children being admitted to schools for their parents' choice, and of those schools, 94% of them are good or better. And that's a great achievement. We've been open, over the 4 years, in the hardest times, we opened 2 new schools, Thiel Primary and Highwood Copse. And talking of our schools ratings, 2 of our schools that are outstanding are Brookfields and the Castle School, both SEN schools. So our children who have the most complex needs can go to outstanding schools here in West Berkshire. It's a credit to our investment and the quality of teaching here in West Berkshire. And during the COVID crisis, the Education Service made sure that every child who needed a laptop and a good internet connection so they could access remote learning was able to. The service helped schools interpret and implement a blizzard of guidance that came from government and so that they could run their schools safely. And then last year, Children and Family Services was inspected by Ofsted and yet again received a good rating with aspects that were outstanding. And I was particularly pleased to hear that the inspectors found that unaccompanied children seeking asylum arriving in West Berkshire are met with kindness. And indeed, they said that kindness was a thread that runs throughout the service. And talking of while I talk about UASC, unaccompanied asylum seeking children, they've continued to arrive here in West Berkshire over the 4 years of our administration. At the start of the term, they mostly arrived here in HGVs, jumping out of them at HGV services, but more recently they've come to us through the National Transfer Scheme from Kent and Portsmouth. And these are young people. These young people are welcomed and cared for in the same way that any other child in our care would be. And these are just a few of the highlights of the challenging time that our services have had in supporting children and young people. And I would take this opportunity to echo your thanks and Councillor Sumner's thanks and praise to our officers for their efforts over the past 4 years. My thanks go also to our partners, public and private, for everything they do for their support of children and young people of West Berkshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowick. Councillor Arderwater.
Thank you, Leader. And again, I'd like to follow on in Councillors Burke and Sumner's appreciation of the work that officers have done. Of course, I'll focus in on the environment. And 2 things I'd like to call out. Firstly, is that this is it is a new service, effectively. It is a new initiative, as we all know, since the Council declared a climate resolution in 2019. Before that, good things were done, but there was no strategy. There was no single impetus, and there was certainly no central organisation to drive it. So I'm delighted that we've made a very solid start in this really important area. I'm also really happy to see that we've made solid progress in the environment in a number of dimensions without compromising work in other areas. And this is probably one of, if not the best example of how different council strategy areas interlock with each other and complement each other. So I'm delighted to see progress. There is, of course, as Ian, we have said on numerous occasions, a huge amount to do. There is no sense of complacency from me or from officers, but I look forward to continuing the drive on the environment and again improving it along with the lives and well-being of residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arderwater. Any other comments? In which, Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. With these type of reports, sometimes they can come here and it almost gives the opposition carte blanche to talk on any subject because it's the council strategy. And I was fearing when I saw the hands going up a party political broadcast of what your achievements were. Now you highlighted some of them, but what none of you said was, Councillor Bowick said 94% of schools, but the target's 95. So, you know, if you're going to say 94, why don't you call out what your target is in public? If you're going to crow about stuff, fair enough, but set it against the context of if your target is going to be. Councillor Somner spoke about the quality of the roads, but actually your target is 2% of roads in state of repair, whereas currently you're at 3%. So again, you're not hitting your targets. Early years attainment hasn't been maintained. I'm happy for you to talk about your achievements, but you should set them in the context where you haven't as well, and maybe call some of those out in the document verbally as well, and then might be a more rounded debate. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Dillon. I'm sure you know that the quality of performance reports coming up where those targets are reviewed. Oh, even better, in which case. Councillor Macro.
Thank you, Leader. In a similar vein, really, under core business planning and housing, it says determination of planning applications in a timely manner has improved considerably over the first 3 years of the strategy. However, that's a little bit at odds with the performance report, because in 4.9, it says planning applications determined on time, impacted by staff recruitment challenges, additional process requirements, and consultation responses timescales. And 5.11 says something similar. Also, on the website, there's a section called Planning Applications Backlog, taking action to clear our planning application backlog. So, as I said, the things are a little bit at odds, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Macro. I'll come back to you on the specifics of the planning. I don't know that detail in the way that you do, so I'm quite happy to come back to you on that particular point. Councillors, this report is to note. Thank you for doing that tonight. It actually feeds into, there is no vote, it does feed into the next report, which is actually around the response to the consultation on the future strategy. And this is very early days for item 11. And again, it's just to note, but I felt that it was worth, when we were talking about planning and how we plan our strategies going forward, that we look at how we do that. So we've obviously been out to consultation on the new council strategy for 24 onwards. And I think that's the right thing to do. I think it's right to engage our residents with their understanding of that particular strategy. So this is an early report just to show you that the thinking around some of the key priority areas is aligned with our residents. There are a number of bits of feedback, but the sample size is relatively small. And I will say the sample size is relatively small, but this was just to note as one of the elements that will go towards helping to shape that future council strategy. So I just wanted to bring it here tonight. It's literally just back in, and that will start to form and be fed into the new council strategy going forward. So I'm more than happy to take any questions on it, but it is purely just a note. In which case we can move on. Are you going to let me off item 13 then? Okay. Item 13 is the performance report quarter 3. Councillor Marina, I believe this is you.
It is, oppose that, Chairman.
And this report's to note as well, so there's no requirement for a seconder.
So as with every quarter, the purpose of the report is to provide assurance that the core business and council priorities for improvement measures in the council strategy are being managed effectively. I'm pleased that, as has been the case previously, indicator measures indicated that the district continues to fare well. The indicators show resilience in the economy, which has remained strong, and delivering our core business activities remain strong despite challenges. Not going to go into a huge amount further detail, but any questions that any members have, I'm sure the relevant portfolio holders will be able to answer those questions either tonight or in writing following the meeting.
Any questions or comments for Councillor Pattendon?
Thank you, Leader. Question about the chart of number of children in need. It's the figure for December 22 is 1,183. In December 2019, i.e. pre-COVID, pre-impact of COVID, the figure is 627. So it's almost double. The report, the previous report talked about problems with recruitment and how that was that meant that it was taking longer to process cases, is that the sole cause of that rise? Is there anything else that's affecting it, and what's the impact on those children? That's the main point.
I'll let Councillor Bowick come in there.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Pattenden. It's a very good question. It is a combination of those two factors: recruitment and the startling, dramatic increase in demand. The increase in demand comes from it's a complex picture, but I feel uncomfortable saying it's because of COVID. But that really is the truth. That as well, part of the truth. It's part of the picture, as well as life becoming much more complicated and challenging for people in general. We have cost of living crisis and so on and so forth. Our children, the effects of the interruption in children's education and the difficulties that goes along with that, and dealing with the families dealing with not being able to work and so on, has brought huge pressure upon them and driven a whole range of complex conditions, which mean that they have started to go through the referral process through into being defined as children in need and out to children in care. So you look at the figures, and we've seen a steady increase. That the increase in cases has put even more pressure on an already difficult recruitment picture, and officers have responded to that with requests for a more attractive recruitment and retention package that we as members have supported, and that plan is now in place, and we're starting to see the early signs of positive response. The problem that we have is that we're fishing in the same pool when it comes to recruitment as our neighbours, and indeed the pool stretches across the country. And whereas some years ago we had a very attractive offer to our to prospective social workers coming looking at working for us, our neighbours have caught up. So we're trying to get ahead of the game. We're starting to see some changes.
Thank you both. Councillor Macro?
Thank you, Leader. On page 397, there's a graph, overall number of new requests for support, adult social care. That goes up in a series of steps every quarter and then drops off. I suspect that graph is cumulative numbers. Could you confirm that, please? Could perhaps that be changed?
I'm going to ask Portco to confirm that in the absence of the portfolio holder for SE.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct. Could that be corrected next time round, please? But on the chart, I noticed a subsequent one does say cumulative on. Could we just make that clear, please? Thank you.
Well, we can note that and make sure that happens next time. Thank you, Councillor Macro. Any other comments on the performance indicators? Okay, members, in which case, thank you very much for that. Let's to note, and we can move forward to item 14, which is a statutory consultation on the Hackney carriage tariffs for 2023. Councillor Marino, I believe this is your report.
Yeah, happy to propose that, Leader.
And I believe that finds you as a seconder, Councillor Bridgman.
Does indeed, and I reserve my right.
Councillor Marino, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Members, this now familiar annual report is being brought to the Executive slightly earlier in the year following an understandable request from the trade to align any future changes in fares to the financial year to help them with their planning. The trade have submitted a request to increase the maximum fares by around 10% to align with the Consumer Price Index, and this will see a cost of a daytime 2-mile journey increase from £8 to £8.70. The licensing committee asked that the trade be consulted informally about the proposals, and based on this consultation and some comparative work from officers, we're proposing to consult on an interior fouling charge of £100 instead of the £200 requested by the trade. The trade also asked to change the wording around when the tariff should be applied. Our legal team have looked at the proposal and felt that as it did not accord with the wording on the legislation, this change should not be consulted on either. They also asked for a few other changes around card payments and types of meters, which will be reflected in the taxi policy, which should come through the process later in the year. In line with the legislation, I believe Section 65 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1976, we're proposing to go out to consult on the proposals between the 11th and the 25th of May. We'll use the usual channels of a public notice in the Newbury Weekly News and Reading Chronicle and in the Market Street reception, putting information out on the consultation portal and writing to the trade directly. If no objections are received, the new fares will come into effect on the 26th of May. If objections are received, we will consider them at the 8th of June executive. I ask members to support the recommendations as set out in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Marino. Is there any questions or comments for Councillor Marino? Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, this might be a tedious link, leader, so feel free to stop me. So one concern I have for...
Stop.
Yeah. One concern I have about taxis is the impact they play on their own home-based community when they're parked up. So West Berkshire Council is the registering body, so we give out the plate. It's got a West Berkshire, logo and its registration and the description of the car. In my ward, and I think I've brought this up with Nigel on the walkabout. We've got a school transport provider with 4 or 5 minibuses, which are contracted by West Berkshire, which are licensed by West Berkshire. But how they store their vehicles overnight, we have no say on. And so what I would like to see is this council, take a position where if we're licensing a car, we're also making sure that they've got the adequate provision to store them without disturbing their whole estate. And so, for example, taking up 5 or 6 car parking bays in a tight cul-de-sac. So just say, I wonder if we could take away when we're looking at our taxi policies in future.
Yeah, no, funnily enough, I have, through my sort of professional capacity, I've obviously deal with people in Reading Borough quite often, and there have been issues related to, taxi companies that have a Reading Borough licence on the back, partly, not just with parking, but also with people potentially sort of vandalising those vehicles overnight, that kind of stuff. So I'm happy to take that away and obviously, take that away.
Thank you, Leah.
No more? In which case, I'll go to you, Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Leader. You'll know that this has been thoroughly debated at Licensing Committee. And what we do now have, and I've said this before, I think it bears repeating, we now have a much different, better relationship with the trade than we had in previous years. So over the last few years, we've been having these trade liaison meetings on a regular basis between members of the Licensing Committee, members of the trade, and we've had proper discussions about all this. So you will find from the report there have been serious discussions about fouling charges, about the cycle of fare setting, and about this question of splitting the fare over time periods. I'm disappointed in legal officers' advice that you can't split a fare. This would mean that if you got into a cab at 10 to midnight and the fare changed at midnight, you would be paying the pre-midnight fare for the whole journey. And that seems to me to be quite wrong. And I think we need to look at that and just develop and investigate the legislation. I do note that the legislation we've referred to here talks about the Act of 1847. So it might be somewhat historic, this legislation, and we might not be able to change it. But I think I'd just like to look at that within the Licensing Committee. But we have the report in front of us. I'm fully in favour. I do think setting a revised set of fares that reflects the increases in cost to the trade, which we anticipated when we brought the last set of fares for. We anticipated we might need to revisit this question sooner rather than later. That's what's happening. Bringing the whole cycle in so that any increases in any changes to the fare table are introduced from the 1st of April. So it ties in with most of the trades financial periods, and introducing a set fouling charge as proposed rather than a maximum as was discussed for the reasons that officers have given. I fully support the recommendations of the paper, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Bridgman. Members, you are asked to accept the recommendations as set out on pages 403 to 404 of the agenda pack. Please can the executive members vote by raising their hand if they are in favour of these proposals?
Thank you. I can declare that recommendation has been approved.
Thank you. In which case, can we move on to item 15 on this evening's agenda, which is the Newbury Sports Hub revised costs and seeking permission to sign the development management agreement. Councillor Howard Wollaston to introduce the report.
Thank you, Leader. The advice from legal services is that the risk of appeal on the judicial review is now so remote that it is appropriate to agree to start work on the sports hub. The time driver is the desirability to have the hub completed by March 2024, so as to allow teams to nominate it as their home location for the 2024-25 season and to contain any further cost increases. At present, we have cost certainty at this on this revised basis until May, and then the 16-week lead-in and 26-month build programme makes this decision crucial. Demand for football pitches continues to grow, with over 50 teams having to travel outside the district area. I strongly recommend that this motion is passed.
Thank you, Councillor Wollaston. We didn't second that paper, but I'm quite happy to second it from the chair. Apologies. Members, do you have any questions for Councillor Wollaston? Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. It's been brought to our attention today that there has been legal proceedings filed with the council in regards of the JR and the right to go to the Court of Appeal for them to hear an appeal. Could officers give any update on that for me?
We have not been served with any notice of appeal.
Okay, speaking to our legal officer before the meeting, I understood there were two options for this council to be served. The normal practice is that we are served in person, but the electronic serving is also allowed in exemptions. And the member of public who has brought that has an email to say that they were allowed to serve it electronically. And I've seen a copy of that email. So if it hasn't been served, I expect it will be served within the coming days. That would, of course, then go to the Court of Appeal to determine whether or not they should be allowed to hear it. Obviously, the High Court said that the right of appeal wasn't there, but you can go straight to the Court of Appeal to ask for that. That will probably take a minimum of 2 months for the courts to even determine whether or not the appeal could be heard again. And so in light of that, would it not be prudent to wait for that legal action to finish so that you actually know what the contract price is? So that's one question, Leader, if I may. Do you want me to stop there?
Just to stop there, I think that is clarified in page 434 of the report, Councillor Dillon, on the legal piece.
Okay, in that no works or planning nothing will be signed until planning is finalised. Yeah, okay, that's fine. I just wanted to ask, and I think Councillor Wollaston looked a bit surprised with the news, so it probably come as news to you all. And then the other question to Councillor Wollaston is, if the project is delayed for any reason, how much more are you willing to pay to see this project get over the line?
One can never say it's none really unlimited amount of money, but we are very committed to producing this. We think it's going to be a great facility for Newbury and West Berkshire, and it goes a long way to solving a lot of the problems we have with providing football pitches for our teams and our young people.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm not going to redo the debate. This isn't a debate about the site. It's a debate about the contract and the increasing costs. I said I had a concern around the legal side, and then one around how many times will you go through this and keep putting another $250,000 aside. Thanks.
Councillor Pattenden.
Thank you, Leader. I wonder whether, given that this was always a contentious issue, and given the strength of feeling in the football community and with others who've got an interest in the London Road Industrial Estate, whether more contingency shouldn't have been put in at the start, and then you wouldn't have had to come back now and said, we need an extra £500,000, which is essentially what it is. Is that something that that could have been foreseen? And sorry, just part two. Given that this has happened, does that mean that procurement in future will be done any differently?
To answer your first question, I don't think anybody foresaw what was likely to happen, what has happened, I should say, and the amount of legal problems that we've had. I mean, if normally, from where we started this project, it should be open. Newbury Football Club should be playing on this pitch this September. And I'm afraid all that's happened is that the continuous delays have just pushed the costs up and up. Not through any choice of ours, I can absolutely assure you.
Thank you both. Councillor Bridgman.
I just want to develop the point that Councillor Dillon has raised about a potential application to the Court of Appeal for leave to appeal. Having discussed this with legal officers, firstly, my understanding is that the council does not accept service electronically, and therefore, well, as a matter of course, I know the council doesn't. We may make exception in particular circumstances. So, and if Sarah Clark has told you that an exception is made, I fully accept that. I just wanted to make the point that that is not a general position of the council. And there is normally a very tight timescale for those who have been unsuccessful in the High Court and have been refused leave to appeal by the judge in the High Court to bring their application to the Court of Appeal to seek that the Court of Appeal gives them leave to appeal. It's not an appeal, it's seeking leave. And that timescale is long past. So we will wait to see if this application finds any favour, if it is on case, wait to see what it says, it finds any favour with the Court of Appeal. But I would simply comment that a long time has elapsed in legal terms since that should have happened. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands, so I just come back to myself to summarise. This is quite an interesting one because back in 2019, I remember one of the first council meetings saying that we would make sure that we put some more football provision into Newbury, and this very much delivers that. I find it quite interesting when Councillor Patterson talks about the strength of feeling in the football community. I think the strength of feeling in the football community, certainly people I've been speaking to, is they want a football solution. They aren't worried where it is. There is a very narrow subset that are determined that it should only be in one location, which kind of is ironic in itself because the people that genuinely want to play just want to play. And that's certainly the word that I've been hearing. So I'm more than happy to second this because I know the strength of feeling among a lot of people that welcome Monks Lane, would love to have that facility here in Newbury, that they think that's an exciting prospect and are really grateful to the fact that we're continuing to invest in this infrastructure here to deliver the playing pitch strategy. So I'm very happy to second this report, Councillor Wollaston, and I would ask that all members, if they are happy to do so, will look at the recommendations in 2 and 2.1 and 2.2 and give me a show of hands if they're also willing to support this.
Thank you. I can confirm that recommendation has been approved.
Thank you all. Can we therefore move on to item 16 of our agenda this evening? Just to be aware, the next two items have got part two, so the commercial sensitive pieces will be discussed in private if we carry the resolution to remove everybody else in one moment. However, to tell you what that contains, to give you a flavour of what is actually up for discussion, we will put some information into part one, which is before you, and I believe that the first one, the contract award for the Leisure contract, is with you, Councillor Wollaston.
Indeed, Leader.
And does that find a seconder?
Yes, Leader.
Thank you. Over to you, Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you. There's been a very significant procurement process by officers and our consultants, which generated 7 bids from specialist operators. This was whittled down to a shortlist of 2, and their recommended providers scored 51% out of 60% available. and was unanimously regarded as the best solution on quality, price and social grounds. The meat of this report is in part 2, and my suggestion is we defer any further debate until then.
Members, any comment at this moment? Councillor Dillon.
I don't think this goes into part 2. So I'll ask the question if it does. So within the part 1 papers, it lists the sites that are in the and their tenures, and it lists the sports hub as one of those sites.
Yep.
So will the leisure management contract, whoever wins it, will they have the right to set the fees and charges for the sports hub? Thanks.
Yes.
And is that in the current business case for the sports hub?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Macro.
Thank you, Leader. I noticed in 6.2, although it says that the existing leisure centres are appropriately located, at the end it says the issue of identifying a location for a new leisure centre is highlighted for future consideration in the leisure strategy 22-32. I hope that's going to be somewhere in the east, because the east do feel a little bit neglected when it comes to leisure centres.
I can very happily reassure you it is.
Councillor Pattenden.
Thank you, Leader. Also, hopefully not part 2, but I'm sure you'll advise me if it is. 2 questions. Given the risks that are outlined in the document, what is the council's exposure if the operator is not able to successfully meet their income targets that that are mentioned? It doesn't give the actual details of them. And how's that going to affect the service levels of the contract? And then secondly, to what level has maintenance been held back over previous years while that was under the responsibility of West Berks Council with the previous contract, or sorry, the existing contract with Parkwood? Because obviously the new contract as described here puts the responsibility of maintenance on the new operator, which is going to put them under significant pressure, I would have thought. So, yeah, interested to know what the implications of that are. Thank you.
In terms of your first question, there is a fixed price contract, which is increased by inflation. But they are taking all of the risk. They are a very experienced operator. They know exactly what they've doing. They've undertaken a huge amount of due diligence. So I think it's frankly their problem. In terms of maintenance, no, we haven't held back. Clearly, there's always been cost pressures over the last few years, but we've managed to keep our leisure centres in as good a condition as we can. Obviously, some with pending refurbishment on 3 of them.
Thank you. We're not going to second this just now because we moved to part 2 with it. So no more questions in part 1? Okay. Can we therefore move to item 17, which is the contract award for the building maintenance measured term contract? Councillor Marino, I believe this is your report.
Yeah, happy to propose that on behalf of Councillor McKinnon.
And does it find a seconder? Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Bowick. Councillor Marino, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. This paper seeks executive approval to award the building maintenance measured term contract. The contract allows the council to instruct services or works at different locations without needing to procure a new contract each time. As per SIPFA recommendations, a 70-30 split between planned maintenance to reactive maintenance in the value of the contract has been applied. A 3-year contract with a 2-year extension is proposed with a total 5-year value of up to 4.2 million. The winning bidder will provide planned works, maintenance and reactive repairs to the council's portfolio of 126 properties throughout West Berkshire. The tender received was evaluated on the basis of 60% price and 40% quality, including a 10% social value. The pricing strategy was to ask for pricing against a set number of likely scenarios, day rates, skilled work and call-out charges. The quality strategy was to assess answers to questions related to programme management, health and safety, customer service capability and managing appointments, responsiveness and management of emergency call-outs and social value. The total number of marks available was 1,000. The winning tender scored 800.
Thank you. Any question for Councillor Marino? No. We're happy to take that over to part 2. Okay, thank you. We won't have the vote until part 2 on that, so therefore we can move to members' questions. Now, members' questions I'm going to move to Councillor Dillon. I think Councillor Abs can have written responses to his, but Councillor Dillon has question B, which is to Councillor Howard Wollaston. So over to you, Councillor Wollaston.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon. I have to say you may be confused, but I'm totally clear on the planning position. The council is in the process of reviewing the business plan, but wishes to use the expertise and input of the proposed leisure contract operator. The sports hub was included as a core leisure facility in the tender documents for the new leisure management contract due to commence this summer. As part of the process, 6 major leisure operators, each with experience of operating facilities similar to the proposed sports hub, submitted bids. Each operator included their outlined business case for the next 10 years as part of their submission. These submissions have undergone a full evaluation, and the outcome will be presented to Executive for final approval very shortly. However, as part of the procurement process, the bids themselves are regarded as commercially sensitive. I hope to be able to release full information after the award of the contract. What I can say is that 5 out of the 6 bids were far more optimistic financially than was assumed by the council on the initial assumptions, and the 6th has already been informed they have been unsuccessful. Do you have a supplementary?
Yeah, thank you. In your reply, you said, or you made reference to me being confused. Actually, I think that word came out from the judge's remarks, where he said there clearly was some confusion around the planning. So,
my
so I was
apologies in that case, Councillor.
That's okay. Thank you. And no, I don't have a supplementary. Thank you.
Thank you both. Can we move to item 19 then? Item 19 is the exclusion of the press and the public. I'd like to ask members to agree by voting that the press and public leave the room in accordance with Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. And if I can see a show of hands to agree, propose that, would you like to, Councillor Bridgman?
Well, I was going to say, do you need a second?
Go on then, second that. Doesn't say this in my notes, but
happy to second.
brilliant. Show of hands.
Thank you. I can confirm that's been approved.
Thank you, everybody. And Lizzie, if you can just confirm when the Zoom recording stops.